Hello everyone, welcome to another lecture during our care conference. With me are Abby and Hannah, who are going to talk about the global cage free and if we are there yet. Abby and Hannah represent Humane League UK. Hello Abby, hello Hannah. We will now play the pre-recorded video, and after that we will meet for a Q&A session.
Hi everyone, thank you for having us here. So today, Abby and I will be speaking to you about global cage-free. Are we there yet? So my name's Hannah, and I'm the Global Corporate Relations Coordinator for the Humane League UK. My roles include corporate outreach and global animal welfare check-ins to multinational food companies, as well as working closely with the Open Wing Alliance to coordinate on corporate outreach and lead on negotiations for OWA global campaigns. I've been passionate about animal welfare and animal rights my entire life, and now have over 20 years experience in global animal protection. Most recently, I worked as director of an animal charity in Afghanistan for 7 years. I live in Devon, England, with my rescue dogs Maxtrap from Iraq, who you can see in a photo, and a 3-legged dog Jebba from Afghanistan. Whilst I still carry out voluntary work for animal rescue organisations, and actually returned from Sarajevo for one yesterday, I feel the work carried out in that area is extremely worthy. But I'm so driven in my work through the Humane League UK to end the injustice of the most exploited animal in the food industry. And I have the power to not only make a difference to one dog or one cat at a time, but billions of laying hens and other factory farm animals who suffer every day.
Hi everyone, I'm Abby, the Corporate Relations Administrator for THL UK. My role is to support the corporate relations team here in the UK and globally, as well as working with the Open Wing Alliance. I carry out research for our outreach to companies, manage our database of commitments, and work on accountability and fulfillment of those commitments. I've been in this role for 5 months, and prior to this, I worked in development and communications, but I always wanted to make a career in animal welfare. I've been vegan for 6 years now, and volunteered with the Humane League for 1.5 years before joining as an employee. One of the reasons I chose THL was because I studied philosophy at university, and I focused my master's degree on vegan and environmental philosophy. I read a lot of theories about veganism, ethics, and how best to help animals, but was drawn most towards the theory of effective altruism, which is all about the practical application of ethics to do the most good that is possible. Whilst I'd always considered a more personal vegan and animal welfare outreach, which I still think is extremely valid and important, when learning about THL's work, I quickly realised that this could never compare to the vast reach of corporate campaigns and their ability to save animals in the millions and even billions. So I'm going to start today with a brief history of the Humane League, how and why we started global cage-free work in particular, and then I will hand over to Hannah to go into more detail about the global cage-free movement, our progress, and the work left to do. So the Humane League, as I'm sure most of you know, is an international not-for-profit animal protection organisation. We were founded in the US in 2005 and have since expanded with offices now in Mexico, Japan, and here in the UK, where we are a registered charity and have been operating since 2016. Our mission is simple. We exist to end the abuse of animals raised for food. So in 2016, after realising that we couldn't and shouldn't do this work on our own, we founded the Open Wing Alliance, bringing together similar groups from around the world, sharing knowledge, expertise, and strategies. I'm sure many of you are aware of this, since many of you are part of the OWA, but for those who might not be, I'll give a short introduction. The OWA began as a means of further expanding our outreach and working with animal protection groups with a similar aim to free laying hens from cages, with the global goal of achieving a cage-free world. It started with a mere few organisations, but rapidly grew, and now comprises over 80 organisations spread across more than 60 countries and 6 continents. So what started as the desire to free laying hens across the world has really become reality, and we truly are a global coalition of dedicated animal welfareists, all working together on this goal of ending cages and improving the lives of chickens. So this, with the OWA was when our global cage-free work really got underway. So what are we asking for when we say cage-free? Whilst battery cages were banned in the EU in 2012, production predominantly moved to an enriched cage system. While these are bigger than battery cages and furnished with perches, nesting areas, and litter boxes, they still restrict the natural behaviours of hens to the detriment of their welfare. So we want the agricultural industry to move to barn systems or free range, where hens will be able to move around with less restrictions and will be able to live more naturally. So why is it necessary to move to barn systems as a minimum requirement? There has been extensive research carried out on the natural behaviours of hens. And like cats, dogs, and in fact all species on Earth, hens have natural desires and strong instincts that they need to carry out. These include, but aren't limited to, perching, dust bathing, spreading their wings, and nesting. And hens require space to express these natural behaviours. Just like any other animal, including humans, when their natural behaviours are restricted, they experience great stress and frustration, which can be extremely detrimental to their psychological as well as physiological well-being. When given the choice, hens are motivated to access extra space and will avoid spaces with a height of less than 46 centimetres, which already exceeds the height of many enriched cages, which are the current welfare standard. Studies have shown that the well-being improvements from enriched cages are minimal, and hens are still cramped, with movement restricted, denied access to natural light, and are prone to disease. So we're currently experiencing something quite unique of being able to understand as a global community, perhaps for the first time, what it is like to be restricted and unable to carry out all our natural behaviours. Whilst I can't directly compare lockdown and having to stay home as much as possible to hens locked in tiny cages for their whole lives, of course, I do believe that there are some correspondences, perhaps some shared experiences that allow us to empathise with a better understanding. We've all had very different experiences of the pandemic, I'm sure, through various stages of lockdown and quarantine and self-isolation. But I think we've all experienced a form of restriction during this time. I personally didn't find lockdown too difficult, but I had to isolate a few weeks ago due to contact tracing. My isolation lasted only for 5 days, but I was surprised at the mental strain it took on me. Just the immediacy of the isolation, which of course starts as soon as you get the notification, and knowing that I couldn't leave my home, I couldn't go food shopping, I couldn't go for a walk or run, and I had to cancel plans with family and friends. Just knowing that I couldn't live my life as I normally do was hugely stressful and frustrating. But even so, I can't comprehend what it must feel like to live a life like this. We all, as beings, have a natural need to be free.
So why cage-free? Why is our ask not free-range or organic? Why use eggs at all, or even for a company to go 100% vegan? Whilst that's ideal in terms of animal welfare, it's not realistic. If improving animal welfare is likely to negatively impact a company's profit margin, we need to give them incentive to do it. Because, let's face it, companies exist to make money, and all too many companies offset profit over the suffering of animals. Moving from cage to cage-free systems is one of the easiest welfare improvements for producers to make. Therefore, by working on freeing laying hens from cages, we can alleviate a vast amount of suffering for the greatest number of animals through the smallest of changes for companies. This allows us to work quickly and effectively and instigate improvements in animal welfare practices in multinational companies. Thanks to a surge in companies making a cage-free commitment, the demand for cage-free eggs has increased and the cost is decreasing. So statistically, laying hens suffer in the greatest numbers out of all animals farmed for food. Globally, the population of laying hens is around 7.5 billion. Compared to this, there are around 1 billion farmed cattle in the world and around 1 billion sheep and 700 million pigs. The only animal farmed in greater numbers than chickens are fish, and this cannot be accurately measured as fish are counted by weight and not individual. This is, of course, an even greater welfare concern, but we have begun work into fish welfare too. But let's focus on laying hens today. Whilst we want to save all animals from suffering in supply chains, we recognise our limits to what we can achieve. Therefore, we wanted to devise a way of working that would allow us to make a positive impact to as many animals as possible with the resources we have. We chose to apply the principles of effective altruism, which advocates the use of evidence and reasoning to determine the most effective way to benefit others. And in this way, we realised that we should start with laying hens. And whilst the development in the global cage-free world has made rapid progress in the past few years, there is still so much improvement to be made. The current global cage-free population of laying hens is around 850 million, which is just 11%. Europe looks good in green, right? Whilst Europe has a cage-free hen population of around 45%, Europe's laying hen population accounts for just 10% of the global population. And conversely, in Asia, the laying hen population accounts for 67% of the global population, but only 5% of that is cage-free. Globally, there are still 6 billion hens still in cages, the equivalent of the entire global population of people in 2011. So imagine it. If you'd have put every single person on this earth in a cage in 2011, that would be equivalent to the amount of laying hens in cages today. However, thanks to groups and individuals like you, change is happening and momentum is growing. So much so that I'm sure a lot of you have seen a celebratory post about the EU legislation committing to bring cages to an end by 2027. Whilst this is a great news, which demonstrates progress and a public consensus that cages must be a thing of the past, there is still a long journey ahead of us. So it is vital that we keep the pressure onto companies more now than ever to best set us up for success for this legislation to go through and be upheld. To be clear, it is the outcome desired at this point, and there is still a long way for us to go for this ban to become a reality. And because we're talking on a global scale here, I should also mention the current legislative progress happening over in the US. There, California, Massachusetts, Michigan, Ohio, Oregon, and Washington all now have legislative bans on using cages in egg production within the states, with many states even banning the sale of caged eggs too. In fact, progress is happening too fast for me to update these slides because in June, Nevada became the 9th state in the US to ban the sale of eggs that come from hens in cages, with a measure also banning the cage confinement of egg-laying hens there too. This is an incredibly important step, ensuring that the imports from state to state are directly impacted by this legislation, as well as other countries who use the US as an influence for progress. And elsewhere in the world, the cage-free movement in Africa is in its infancy, so there are not many multinational African companies with policies yet. But we are collaborating with some of the amazing regional groups there to change that. In November 2018, just 2 months after a campaign was launched against one of the biggest restaurant groups there, Famous Brands announced their intention to go cage-free by 2025. In Asia, the markets are rapidly changing too. We saw the first policies published in Chinese, and since then, more and more companies with global policies have published them in written Chinese also. These companies include Compass Group, which you can see here, as well as City Shop, Campbell's, and most recently, Hilton Hotels. And just a few weeks ago, Carrefour Taiwan, one of the largest retailers, reinforced their commitment to going fully cage-free by 2025, including both private label and national brands. So how do we effectively make tangible, long-lasting change happen? We use a tactic I'm sure many of you are familiar with. We target the largest and most influential food corporations to produce commitments and policies to phase out the cruelest practices in their supply chain. And we have done so with great success because to date we have secured policies for over 2,000 corporations. But why target corporations? Why not other strategies like targeting producers, educating the public, or even making regional governments pass the legislations like those we've previously mentioned? Well, the short answer is that we do all these things too, and so do many other groups as well. But we see these as equally essential pieces of the broader movement for the global good. And by doing this, we have achieved as a collective over 100 global cage-free policies. And these are just a few of the top global companies who are committed to go cage-free on or before 2025. In OWA's recent report on fulfillment, out of the 2,000 cage-free policies, 954, which is roughly half of all existing policies, have 2020 deadlines. And out of that, 85% fulfilled, another 5% are reporting, which is absolutely incredible and actually much better than we were anticipating.
So to summarize so far, although we are making incredible progress with all the corporate commitments to go cage-free and cage ban legislations in many countries, we still have so much further to go. As you saw on the cage-free map of the world, battery cages are unfortunately still the norm. Europe is currently leading the global cage-free movement at 45% cage-free, and European organisations may be wondering why we need to increase the pressure on cage-free work when things are going so well in this region. It might seem like the right time to move on to other things, but this is not the case. Whilst other welfare work is of course important, our cage-free work is not yet over. As we have visually represented here, there is a spotlight on Europe at the moment. The cage ban is extremely positive and has passed the EU Commission, but has not yet passed Council or Parliament. And additionally, a solid date has not yet been set. So this means that it could still be decades before Europe is 100% cage-free. We need to show that we are serious about this goal and keep encouraging companies to commit before they're forced to. An increased pressure in Europe also helps cage-free efforts across the world. It's a great example for animal protection organisations in other countries to use in dialogue with companies, and is also incentive for companies and countries around the world to match the progress. So what else can we do? It's so important not only to get cage-free commitments, but to hold companies accountable and ensure that those commitments are fulfilled. One of my main tasks at THL is to maintain our database of commitments through the website Chicken Watch. This is the THL-run but OWA-wide commitment database. Policies are submitted through the website, which you can see here, and it's an open form that anyone can use to let us know of a cage-free policy. This resource is incredibly useful for so many things. We use the data to generate reports, which can be used to celebrate fulfillments, to inform enforcement campaigns, and track progress not only globally, but by continent, country, region, and issue. So one of the most important tasks we have now, other than getting commitments from every company with laying hens in their supply chain, is enforcement of those commitments. Getting the commitment is step one. It's an incredible achievement, but there is so much more work to do to free those hens from cages. And the next step in our strategy, along with maintaining a positive communication with companies, is to encourage regular reporting of progress. This allows us and the company to easily track their progress. If a company is falling behind, we can offer them assistance or can alter their deadline, which is not ideal, but it's preferable to ceasing communication and allowing the company to forget the commitment. Reporting also offers incentive for the company to fulfill their commitment, including public accountability through having information online. And it also benefits their CSR because they can annually prove that they are improving animal welfare. It also makes tracking fulfillment easier for us. When a company regularly reports and we remain in contact with them, we can note and celebrate their fulfillment as soon as it happens. This makes our reports more accurate. And when we are looking at fulfillment statistics and cage-free percentage, we are up to date.
So how do we apply the pressure to companies on a global scale? The Open Wing Alliance's current campaign against Yum Brand is a perfect example, and some of you may even be involved. So let's talk more about this campaign. Yum Brands is the world's largest restaurant group and operates in over 150 countries. It's the parent group of KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and Habit's Burger and Grill. Yum Brands and their stakeholders rely on the performance of each and every restaurant, with onus on stock value and maintaining an overall positive company image. Leadership at the global headquarters has the power to release a policy that covers every single restaurant location worldwide, even those that are franchised. As the global campaign should be, the Yum Brands campaign is a multifaceted and adaptable to work in all countries. Yum is less able to control the message with international media and franchises in other countries. So this is one reason why regional tactics are so important and group participation is vital. So going cage-free is not just a benefit to animals, but to the consumer and indeed the company too. The benefits are countless, and it's a move that many of the company's stakeholders will support for numerous reasons, often with the benefits of improving welfare far outweighing the small cost it takes to do so. Once a company commits, the pressure is on for the competitors and peers to follow suit and not get left behind in the movement. And just as importantly, organisations like ours all around the world use our victories as a benchmark in animal welfare expectations and the legislation we push forward as a driving force of change in their own countries. It truly is a collective effort in global push for change. Every single victory each one of us has, no matter how small, counts towards a bigger picture and our end goal, which must always be the forefront of everything we do.
The final and general point we want to make is that global cage-free success will only be realised through a united global effort. We can't give up now. The OWA has achieved so much for laying hens, and I know we can achieve so much more. I believe that we can get to that cage-free world, but we need to keep working and keep working together. So to put a number on the work left to do, and going off our current estimate of around 11% global cage-free, around 6 billion hens in cages still need you.
So to conclude, our message is simple. Global cage-free momentum is accelerating at a rapid pace. 89% of hens still in cages all around the world need us now more than ever. So we must keep our vital work going to open the cages.
We want to end by thanking you for supporting the Humane League and the Open Wing Alliance, either by being a part of it or supporting our work or by being here to listen to us today. So a big thank you to all of you. And if you want to learn more, you can visit our website, you can email us, and we now have some time for questions. Please feel free to unmute or write in the chat.
Hello everyone, we're back here with Abby and Hannah for the Q&A session. We've got some interesting questions from you, so I will just start with the first from the top. From your experience, what is the best way to get companies to report their progress on phasing out cage eggs, bad cop or good cop?
I've been in a role for 7 months, so I haven't had too much experience of being either. I think I've managed to have a bit of a balance of both, and it's very much about reading the individual from the company, reading the company itself, and just reacting to the way that they respond to your outreach. So I don't know, I personally quite like the bad cop approach, because I think everything's out in the open then, and you know, you can just say what you think, say how you feel, and the relationship is established in that capacity. But yeah, good cop definitely has its places where it can be the most effective method, because you don't want to just go in and be the bad cop and establish a really detrimental relationship. So yeah, it's definitely down to the individual company and reading the way that they react to your outreach. And so far, I haven't actually had to do bad cop too much, but I don't know, I would actually look forward to doing a bit more bad cop in the future. I don't know if Abby's got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And I also have very limited experience. But I would say as well, I think we try to include an expectation for reporting in initial dialogue. So that way the companies know before they've made the commitment that it's expected and why it's a good thing. So that could help.
Cool, thank you. Another question is, do you think there's anything that activists in Europe can do to help activists in Asia and Africa with their cage-free campaigning efforts?
Just adding their voice to the movement, really. We have global campaigns that everyone gets involved with. If we're targeting a certain company and they have locations in their area, just reaching out to them and just adding their support, adding their voice, and just leading by example in terms of influencing the companies in their sectors and their organizations and their regions in the world. So yeah, I think the world, like we said very much in our presentation, the eyes are on Europe. So it's definitely a way to influence companies in those areas and organizations as well, just having that global support for the organizations. It can be just such a powerful and strengthening thing for the organizations to have. So adding your voice is a powerful thing to do, that's for sure. I think Abby was probably more of an activist than me, so she might be able to add a bit more to that.
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I agree with everything Hannah said. And especially in regards to our work, working on global campaigns really helps, including all regions in the world. It means that no matter where you are, you're contributing towards that global effort, and in areas like Asia and Africa as well, no matter where you are. And just working with the OWA, if you're a part of that, then that's a great way to network with groups and to share your experience and expertise. And we have regular events, like I know we have an OWA summit in Africa, well, not in Africa, but online for African groups coming up later this year. And just having events like that really helps groups get together and we can share knowledge and help each other out.
Yeah, I think the YUM campaign is a really good example of just a collective global effort to just collaborate, just to do better.
Cool. Thank you very much. Next question is also about commitments. Would you also include companies without cage-free commitments in your progress reports?
Oh, that's an interesting question. That would be quite an unusual scenario. I haven't come across that yet, but it would be quite detrimental for a company not to have a commitment, but then still have that progress, because they're almost selling themselves short by not communicating their progress and their efforts. So yeah, I'm sure we would very much appreciate any sort of reporting, but if a commitment's not there, then it's not really an interest in the company to not have it.
Abby, do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I agree with Hannah. I think that usually our progress reports focus on companies with commitments. I think sometimes it could be a good thing to include companies without cage-free commitments. Then we'd have the comparison there, and it could help them make a commitment. But I'm not sure about that.
Okay, thank you. Another question. There was and still sometimes is a lot of criticism from animal advocacy movement about corporate outreach and on welfare focus. Very often it's contrasted with lifestyle change, adopting a vegan lifestyle. What of the arguments against welfare change from the critics do you find the most plausible?
Well, I don't think it's a autonomous argument, really. They can be very much complementary. So starting a cage-free journey for a company is a almost really fundamental way of establishing animal welfare within that company, because it's an absolute fundamental thing that they can do by taking the chickens out of the cages. And from there, they can begin their progress and they can just have animal welfare on their radar. And it definitely isn't detrimental to veganism either. At the end of the day, not everyone's just going to go vegan overnight. That would obviously be the ideal, but we have to be realistic with our ask. And so asking a company to do the foundation of animal welfare is such a good stepping stone, and something that we really encourage in improving the animal welfare in their supply chains, and just having the animal welfare concept as part of their company identity. It's also just the fact that, as much as we'd like it, like I said, not everyone's going to go vegan overnight. So there is that alternative to plant-based products for a company. And again, just the people who do choose to eat products and have egg products, they do have that option of knowing that they're just having it from chickens who aren't, and laying hens that aren't in cages.
Yeah, I agree. And just looking at the last part of the question, I think the argument against welfare change that I find most plausible, well, I'm not sure what arguments you mean, but of the ones I know, I do think it's plausible, and it's a good point that obviously we want to save all animals from suffering. So you want to do the most and you want to ask for the most, which would be going completely plant-based or going completely vegan. So I think that's a very, very valid argument, and that's definitely something that we all want and we're all aiming for. But as Hannah said, it's just not realistic, unfortunately, overnight. So even though I know that the arguments are often contrasted with welfare and abolitionism, having worked with welfare so much now, I don't think it's a contrast at all. I think we're both working towards the same thing. We're just doing it in different ways, and through studies and our campaigns, we're making so much progress, and we are ending the suffering for so many animals, and we're making small steps to that total welfare change. So yeah, I think that the arguments are very plausible, but I think it's working towards the same goal.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time, so thank you very much for your answers, and thank you very much for your questions. For those of you who would still like to hang around and talk with us, with Hannah and Abby, there's a networking session following. There should be a link already on the group chat. So thank you very much, and see you soon at the networking session.